I thought I was doing everything right. After my knee surgery, they sent me home with a plan. Physical therapy twice a week, the nurse said, handing me a folder thick with printed diagrams and exercise names I couldn't pronounce. I followed it. I really did. I showed up on time. I smiled through the pain. I did the leg lifts and the stretches. I listened to the therapist, nodded politely, and pushed through the soreness. I even kept going after I got home, at first anyway. But weeks passed, then months, and still, I was weak. Not the kind of tired you expect after a workout. Not even the soreness that fades with time. This was different. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone older, more fragile. Getting out of a chair felt like lifting weights. I couldn't walk far without needing to stop. Stairs? They became a mountain. My muscles weren't coming back. In fact, they felt like they were disappearing. I blamed myself at first. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe I skipped a rep here or there. Maybe this was just old age creeping in. But then I started talking to others at church, at the community center, even at the grocery store. And guess what? I wasn't alone. There were dozens of us, men and women, all over 60, who had gone through therapy and done the work, only to be left just as weak, sometimes even weaker, than before. One woman told me she felt like therapy had just moved the pain around. A man said he actually lost balance after therapy ended. It wasn't just me. Something was missing. So I started reading. Not medical textbooks, I'm not a doctor, but simple articles, videos, anything I could understand. And slowly, I noticed a pattern. No one ever talked about what happens after therapy. They showed you how to exercise, but not how to recover. They told you to stretch, but not how to refuel your body. They measured your progress with a stopwatch and a clipboard, but they didn't check if you were sleeping enough, eating the right things, or if your muscles were actually healing between sessions. They forgot to tell us that physical therapy is just one piece of the puzzle. And without the rest, without proper recovery, our bodies never get the chance to build back stronger. We end up tired, frustrated, and doubting ourselves, when really, we were just missing the part no one mentioned. I remember one morning, about 2 months after I finished my sessions, I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to stand. My legs didn't want to cooperate. It wasn't pain exactly. It was more like emptiness, like the strength had quietly drained out of me during the night, and no one had told me. That was the morning I realized this wasn't just slow progress. This was a red flag. I had followed the instructions. I had shown up, stretched, breathed through the soreness, but no one had ever talked to me about muscle recovery. Not once. There had been no mention of food, of rest, of what to expect in the hours or days after a session. They gave me exercises, but not a real plan, just a list. As if building strength was like following a recipe. Add 1 rep, stir twice, and voila, you're good as new. But our bodies at this age aren't like they used to be. I used to bounce back from things without thinking. A little soreness, a little stiffness, that was nothing. Now everything takes longer. Healing takes more effort. And most importantly, muscles don't rebuild while we're exercising. They rebuild while we rest. That's the part no one emphasized. The in-between moments. The hours after a session when your muscles are trying to repair. The nights when good sleep is more powerful than any gym routine. The meals that either help rebuild tissue or leave your body searching for missing pieces. No one said a word about those. I realized I'd been skipping meals after therapy. Too tired to cook, too sore to stand in the kitchen. I thought I was being tough by pushing through, but really I was starving the very muscles I was trying to rebuild. I wasn't drinking enough water either. And sleep? Don't even get me started. I'd toss and turn all night thinking it was normal to be uncomfortable after therapy. But when I started making small changes, drinking a protein shake after sessions, getting to bed earlier, doing some light movement instead of collapsing on the couch, I began to notice something. My legs didn't feel so hollow. I had a bit more energy. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And for the first time in months, I started to believe my body could get stronger again. The sad part is, none of this is secret knowledge. It's just not being shared. At least not with people like me, people over 60, trying to do the right thing, trying to stay independent, trying not to be a burden. We're willing to work. We just need the whole picture, not half of it. I started to look at recovery the way a gardener looks at soil. You can plant all the seeds you want, exercise, stretching, movement, but if the soil is dry, cracked, and missing nutrients, nothing's going to grow. That was my body. I had been planting over and over, but never tending to the soil. It amazed me how simple some of the missing pieces were. A neighbor told me about magnesium, said it helped her with muscle cramps and sleep. I didn't even know older adults like us often don't get enough of it. Then there was protein, not just meat, but eggs, beans, yogurt. Things I'd eaten all my life, but never thought of as part of recovery. I had assumed that therapy would just work, that my body would handle the rest on its own. But at this age, we can't assume anymore. We have to support the process. And then, there's something no one dares mention at the clinic. Rest days. I used to think they were just for athletes or bodybuilders. But I learned the hard way. Pushing through fatigue every day wasn't strength. It was sabotage. Muscles don't rebuild while we're pushing. They rebuild when we stop. I think back now to those therapy sessions, and I remember how rushed it all felt. In, out, next patient. I don't blame the therapists. They were kind, and I believe they meant well. But the system isn't set up for people like us. It's set up for quick recovery, for metrics, for numbers that fit neatly in a chart. No one asks how you're sleeping. No one checks if your kitchen has healthy food. No one wonders whether you live alone or if you have help at home. But all of that affects recovery. All of it. I began to rebuild not because I worked harder, but because I started paying attention to what happened between the workouts. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped thinking I was just getting old. I started treating my body with a little more care and a lot more patience, and that made all the difference. Now, I still have days where I feel slow, I still get sore, but I don't feel hollow anymore. I feel like I'm building something again. Like each step isn't just effort, it's progress. I wish someone had told me all this from the start. I really do. Because I think of all the other people like me doing their best, showing up, and quietly wondering why nothing's changing. Wondering if they're broken, if they're weak. They're not. We're not. We were just missing the rest of the story. And now that I know, I want to share it. There was one afternoon I won't forget. I was walking through the park, slowly, as usual. I had my cane with me, not because I needed it every step, but because I didn't trust my legs without it. The air was crisp. Children were running in circles, full of energy I used to have. And there on a bench was a man about my age. His posture caught my eye, not because he looked strong, but because he looked defeated. Shoulders slumped, hands clasped too tightly. I saw myself in him, the version of me from a few months ago. I sat beside him. We talked, and just as I suspected, he had finished physical therapy 3 weeks earlier. Hip replacement. He had done everything right, followed the instructions, attended every session, but now, he couldn't even carry groceries without feeling shaky. They said I'm healing fine, he told me, but I don't feel fine. I told him what I'd learned, about recovery, about what they forget to tell us, about how strength doesn't just return because someone gave you a handout. It returns when you understand what your body is really asking for. His eyes lit up, not because I had some magic answer, but because I had words for something he'd been feeling but couldn't explain. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't failing. He was just never given the full plan. I told him to eat within 30 minutes of walking, to drink water with electrolytes, to give himself permission to rest after a hard day and not feel guilty, to sleep without distractions, to stop thinking of recovery as homework and start thinking of it as gardening, nourishing, gradual, intentional. It made me realize how powerful it is to simply share. No charts, no big words, just stories. That's why I decided to speak up, because too many of us finish therapy feeling confused. Too many go home with a printout and a pat on the back, and no one explains what to do next. We're treated like our bodies stopped learning just because they've aged. But we're still learning. We're still adapting. We just need the information that fits our season of life. No, recovery isn't fast, not at this age. But it can be steady, it can be real, and it can be ours, if we stop seeing therapy as the end point and start seeing it as just the middle of the story. I used to think I was alone in this. Now I know I'm not, and maybe, just maybe, If we talk about it more, fewer people will have to feel what I felt. That quiet, heavy disappointment of doing everything right and still feeling broken. We deserve better. We deserve to heal, not just be told we should. Looking back, I don't regret going through physical therapy. It helped me move again. It gave me structure. It got me off the couch and reminded me that progress is possible at anybody's all age, but I do regret thinking it was the whole answer. Recovery, I've come to believe, is not a single road. It's a network of small paths: exercise, nutrition, rest, mindset, patience. Leave one out and the rest wobble. But when you tend to them all, even gently, they begin to support each other. These days I keep things simple. I take short walks in the morning sunlight, not for cardio, but to remind my body it's awake. I stretch not to perform, but to feel space inside my joints again. I eat protein with breakfast not because it's trendy, but because it gives my muscles a chance. I rest in the afternoon without guilt. And when I feel tired, I no longer see it as weakness. I see it as a signal. A message from my body saying, I'm working on something. Please let me finish. Sometimes I think of healing as something we have to fight for. But more and more, I see it as something we have to make room for. When I tell friends about this, they often nod slowly, like they've been waiting for someone to say it out loud. I thought it was just me, they'll say. But it never is. There are so many of us quietly trying to put our strength back together with only half the instructions. That's why I share this story. Not because I have all the answers, I don't. But because I learned that being tired after therapy doesn't mean you failed. It might just mean no one showed you what comes next. And once you know that, everything changes. I'm still rebuilding. I probably always will be. But now I understand that healing at this age isn't a race. It's a rhythm. A pace that respects what my body has been through. A dance between effort and ease. And with that understanding, I found something better than fast results. I found consistency, confidence, hope. So if you're like me, if you've done the work but still feel weak, don't give up. Don't assume it's too late. Don't believe the lie that aging means decline is inevitable. Instead, ask the question they forgot to answer. How do I recover properly? Then, listen closely to your body. Nourish it, rest it, respect it. Because sometimes the missing piece isn't more effort, it's more care.